Abigail Adams, the woman who helped shape America without ever holding power. When we think about the founding of the United States, we often picture battlefields, declarations, and powerful men standing before history, but rarely do we talk about the woman who helped guide the nation's conscience from behind closed doors. Her name was Abigail Adams, and her story is one of intelligence, sacrifice, courage, and quiet strength. A childhood without privilege. Abigail was born in 1744 in Massachusetts, in a time when girls were not expected to dream beyond marriage and motherhood. She never attended college. In fact, she never attended school the way boys did. Education for women was considered unnecessary, even dangerous. But Abigail refused to accept that limitation. Often sick as a child, she spent long days at home reading books from her father's library: history, philosophy, politics, literature. While the world told her to remain silent, she taught herself how to think, and that thinking would one day echo through the halls of American history. Marriage in the shadow of revolution. At just 19 years old, Abigail married John Adams, a lawyer with a sharp mind and an even sharper sense of duty. Their marriage was not just built on love, it was built on partnership. As tensions grew between the American colonies and the British Crown, John Adams was constantly called away. Meetings, Congress, diplomatic missions, war. Abigail stayed behind. She ran the family farm, managed finances, raised children, protected them during outbreaks of disease. She endured food shortages, inflation, and fear, all while the nation around her burned and bled. But Abigail didn't just survive. She observed, she thought, and she wrote. Letters that shaped a nation. Abigail Adams wrote thousands of letters, many to her husband, some to friends, others never meant for public eyes. These letters were not simple love notes. They were political. She debated liberty, warned about tyranny, spoke against slavery, questioned injustice, and most boldly she challenged the place of women in the new nation. In 1776, as John Adams helped draft the foundations of American law, Abigail sent him a letter that history would never forget. She wrote, "Remember the ladies." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't anger. It was a plea and a prophecy. She warned that if women were ignored, they would one day demand change. At a time when women had no legal identity, Abigail dared to imagine equality. That single sentence made her one of the earliest voices for women's rights in American history. A moral compass in a broken world, Abigail Adams believed deeply in freedom, but not selective freedom. She opposed slavery, calling it a contradiction to the ideals America claimed to stand for. She believed education was essential, especially for women. She believed power should be guided by morality, not ambition. And she wasn't afraid to tell her husband when she disagreed with him. John Adams once said that Abigail was his most trusted advisor. When he doubted himself, she strengthened him. When he was angry, she grounded him. When he drifted from his values, she reminded him who he was. She had no title, but she had influence. First Lady in a New World. When John Adams became the second President of the United States, Abigail became First Lady at a time when the role had no definition. The White House was unfinished, cold, bare. Abigail hung laundry in the East Room. She entertained diplomats, she defended her husband from political attacks, and she endured criticism simply for being outspoken. Some called her too opinionated, too bold, too involved. History would later call her essential. A mother who raised a president. Abigail's influence didn't end with her husband. She believed deeply in education and raised her children with discipline, curiosity, and moral responsibility. One of those children, John Quincy Adams, would go on to become the sixth President of the United States. Her legacy lived on, not just in letters, but in leadership. The cost of strength. Abigail's life was not easy. She buried children, lived through war, endured loneliness, watched her country fracture and reform again and again, yet she never lost her belief in America's potential. She understood something many leaders forget: that nations are not built by power alone, but by principles. Why Abigail Adams still matters. Today, Abigail Adams never signed the Declaration of Independence. She never stood on a battlefield, she never held public office, and yet America would not be the same without her. She reminds us that real influence doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with persistence, with letters written late at night, with ideas spoken when they are unpopular. She reminds us that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's thoughtful, sometimes it's patient, sometimes it's written by candlelight. Abigail Adams didn't just witness history, she helped shape it. Before